I'm headed into the shop today. It's going to be a good one, I think. I'm going to finish up the hold down buttons for the bench, and then it will be completely done, which is pretty sick. I'm excited about that. But before I go, I wanted to quickly talk about something that's been in my mind since last night when I was reading my book on the train home. I'm reading Art and Fear. And I know this was fully a kind of throwaway line in the book. Not nearly what they were attempting to suggest, but I'm not responding directly to the book so much as I am just this kind of general sense. They talk about the fear that a lot of artists will have about their work being misinterpreted or misunderstood, and the way that they word it was, there's a fear that your art won't be considered art, but it'll be called a hobby or decoration or craft, which I think is kind of like an outdated mode of thinking. I'm not, again, putting the authors of this book in particular on blast. This is something that is kind of pervasive, is the fear of not being viewed as an artist. Maybe this is because I don't think of myself strictly as an artist, but I think that's also that stems from where I'm going with this in general. I don't think there's a division between art and craft. I don't think there's a division between craft and decoration, between hobby and art. I think these are all artificial terms. They're all categorizations that have sprouted up as labor was divided by the moneyed interests that could divide that labor. There's this quote that was going around on Instagram and I'm sure other social media platforms. It's apparently a Marco Pierre White quote, and he says, "Somebody who works with their hands is a laborer. Somebody who works with their hands and their mind is a craftsperson. Somebody who works with their hands, their mind, and their heart is an artist. I want to be an artist." Which is just feels to me like a bunch of dog shit. What's wrong? Being a laborer is great. I love doing work. I love working with my hands. I love having to take the time to think about what I'm doing and being a craftsperson. I love producing things that are purely aesthetic, like an artist. These are artificial distinctions that don't really map onto real-world experiences. If you're unable to see the artistry in a properly framed house, if you're unwilling to see the craft that goes into incredibly well painted or sculpted pieces of art, if you're unwilling to or unable to understand the artistry in a well-made thrown ceramic mug, or that the glassware set that you got from a local artisan, the idea that there's something distinct between a painter and a ceramicist, or a framer and a sculptor is a disease of the mind. We're all making things. We're all engaged in the splendor of labor. We're all working with our hands. There's no difference. There might be sociological and socioeconomic distinctions between us, but those are the things that need to be struggled against, not reinforced in some idealistic metaphysical way. That's backwards. That's nonsense. Being a laborer is life's greatest joy. Being able to work is the whole fucking point, you know? And that can be anything. Like, it doesn't need to be like strenuous manual labor, but like, you know, working is the beauty of life. Or I guess like I should say like laboring is the beauty of life. Working a job sucks because you're just being exploited. But being able to make something, regardless of what it is the whole point. I'm gonna call this a paraphrase and not a quote because I don't know if I'm getting the words exact, but there's a line in somewhere in Marx that says something along the lines of the goal of communism is to make laboring the primary joy of one's life. That resonates with me very deeply. I think that's the goal of my existence right now, is to make laboring the primary joy of my life. If anything, it's the things around laboring that are just so fucking tedious. You know, all the like bureaucracy that you need to deal with, the crumbling infrastructure in Ontario, the like rising right-wing fascism of, you know, the Etobicoke Fords, just like the general collapse of our social order, because we've had 40 years of you know, lowercase l liberal austerity governments just eroding everything, making laboring for a wage, laboring under exploitative conditions, just being ground down by fucking the Westons. It sucks. I want to make things because I enjoy making things. Yeah. Like, all of this to say, the distinctions between art and craft are manufactured as a way to split us up and divide working people from each other. And it's something that we should be wary of. I understand there's a long history of the erasure of women's work and people of color's work, and the pejorative connotations that craft might have in those contexts. You know, domestic making being considered craft, whereas, you know, making in a studio context or a workshop context being considered art. And that sucks, obviously. That is, you know, a part of the historical marginalization of people, and has no bearing, or not no bearing, should have no ground in our contemporary thinking about making. I think giving the notion that we should be worried that our work is will be remembered not as art but as craft, any countenance, giving it any sway, any weight, is just giving in to the premises that craft is lesser than art, is an idea that I think is outdated and should no longer sway people. I don't have a grand conclusion other than artists and craftspeople, hobbyists, decorators, we're all working people. We're all doing things that we enjoy doing and expressing kind of physicality of being in our own way. And I'm not going to let private equity firms and capitalist interests divide me from my comrades. Fuck that. tantalizingly close to having this bench done. But unfortunately, the screws that I have for the hold down buttons are too short, and I won't have the opportunity to address that until Tuesday. Another side effect of having so much free time today, I've been looking over the sketches I made and the concept I thought I had for a collection. And I don't know if it's just because I'm in a bad mood, but I kind of fucking hate it now. I think it works well for a stool and a bench. And if I want to make tables with it, I gotta keep iterating. The coffee table would work, I think, but the side table doesn't feel like it would. I don't know. I gotta figure it out by next Friday, because that's the last day I have access to the CNC at Sheridan. And if I want to make templates and guides to help me make those on the CNC, then it needs to be ready by Friday. So this upcoming week is going to be a lot of going over sketches, a lot of 3D modeling, and trying to get back into the mindset of my capstone work from Sheridan and the methodology I was developing there to really get back into this. I think I've given myself too much time to relax, too much time to just vibe it out, too much time to make it up in the shop, and I need to fucking grow up and get over that and get back to work like a designer would, you know?